One of the most common questions I get from Florida buyers is some version of the same question. What does my money actually get me up there? And I love this question because the honest answer is that $1 million budget puts you in a really strong position in the high country. You can get a beautiful home with that, but what it gets you? Well, that specifically depends on a lot and where you're looking. And there's one factor in particular that almost every buyer underestimates until they're standing on the property and seeing it for themselves. I was out with buyers this past weekend who ran straight into this. It was a couple from Florida, clear on their budget, clear on their wish list, and we were walking properties together, and it taught us all something about the one factor that changes the picture depending on where in the high country you're looking. So in this video, I want to do something genuinely useful. I'm going to show you exactly what $1 million buys you in the North Carolina high country right now, honestly, and town by town, what you get and the one thing worth understanding before you start your search. Hi, welcome back. I'm Jeremy with the Gillette Group. Now, let's get into it. All right, so before we get into the specifics, there's something important to understand about the high country market that shapes everything else in the conversation. This market, it's bifurcated, and that's not a word I use lightly, nor often, quite frankly, but it really defines how this area works. And what I mean is this: the high country has two very different buyer pools operating in the same market at the same time. You've got the local community, people who've lived here and worked here for generations, and then you have the second home buyer market, which is largely coming from Florida, Charlotte, the Triad, other parts of the Southeast. These two groups do not have the same purchasing power, and that creates a market where the median price across the whole area, it sits around $500,000. But that number doesn't really tell the full story for someone that's coming in and looking at a vacation home as a buyer. Because the moment you start looking in the areas and communities where second home buyers are concentrated, particularly around Blowing Rock, Banner Elk, or the established gated communities, that $500,000 median, it almost becomes irrelevant. In these pockets, $1 million is often closer to the entry point than the midpoint. So, if you're a Florida buyer and you've looked up the average home in Boone or Banner Elk online, you felt comfortable with what you saw, I want you to go into this video with that context. The market you're shopping in is not the same market that's driving averages. Now, let's talk about what $1 million actually gets you, area by area. Let's start with Boone and the broader area around it, because this is where $1 million actually goes the furthest in the high country. At that price point in and around Boone, you're looking at a genuinely nice home. We're talking 2,500 to 3,000 square feet, 3 to 4 bedrooms, good finishes, a wraparound deck, and in many cases, at least a partial mountain view. I'll call it a seasonal view. Now, let's help define seasonal. It's when the trees drop all their leaves and you can see through them. If your use case largely includes summer and a view as a priority, you're going to have to weigh further the seasonal view if it's sufficient. Now, back to the partial view. It's not necessarily a long-range panoramic view, but it's something. It's trees, it's ridge lines, it's the feeling of being in the mountains. Now, here's the honest part. It's unlikely that it's going to be new construction. A significant amount of the inventory in this range was built between the mid-1980s and the early 2000s. These homes have been updated over the years to varying degrees. Some of them have been beautifully renovated. They feel completely current. Others still have some things a buyer would want to address. So, condition varies and it matters. This is where your inspection will be an important part of any decision you make. The RPD, the Residential Property Disclosure, can be filled out as a no representation. Or, are you fully trusting the word of a seller? My preference, it's to trust the inspection, except for railings. Whether it's in a loft or a deck, I've never met a railing that wasn't loose and should be checked by a licensed trade person or GC per the inspector. But what you also get at $1 million in this area is options. There's more variety of property types. There's more locations to choose from. There's more room to negotiate than you'll find once you move into the more premium areas. If you want to get into the high country at a strong price point and you're willing to be a bit further from the ski mountains, the Boone area, at $1 million, it gives you more value. All right, so now let's talk about what happens when you move towards the areas that most of our Florida buyers are drawn to. Blowing Rock, Banner Elk, and the communities around Banner Elk like Beach and Sugar Mountain. And this is where I want to be really straight with you, because this is where the expectation gap tends to show up more clearly. In these areas, $1 million is often near the entry point in the premium communities, not the middle of the market. The entry point. So, What does that mean practically? It means $1 million near Blowing Rock or in a community like Eagle's Nest in Banner Elk. You're getting a solid home with great outdoor spaces, good bones, and it probably needs some updates or others, have been recently completed. You're getting the lifestyle and the community. In Eagle's Nest, it will be a small home in the camp or village area. But here's the part that surprises most buyers when they actually get up here and start walking the properties. The view may be limited, and I say that not to discourage anyone, but because I think it's the single most important thing to understand going in. A wooded lot with privacy and a partial mountain glimpse, that can carry the same price tag as a home with expansive long-range views that are nearby. View is a specific premium in this market, and it's not automatically included at any price point. It's something you have to prioritize and specifically search for in many cases, and specifically pay a premium to get it. So the buyers I was out with this past weekend, they ran into exactly this dynamic. They had a wish list that included views, great outdoor space, a community feel, and proximity to skiing. And as we walked properties in that $1 million range near the areas they were most interested in, they got clear on something. The homes that hit everything else on their list but had limited views were genuinely nice. But once they stood on a deck with a long-range mountain view in front of them, they understood why that view carries the premium that it does. That clarity was worth a slightly higher number. Not a dramatic jump, just enough to get the specific thing that mattered more to them. That's not a story about $1 million falling short. It's a story about understanding exactly what you're prioritizing before you commit to a number. If this is giving you a clearer picture on what to expect up here, go ahead, hit the like button. It helps us get this information in front of more people who are doing exactly the same research. Subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's keep going because I want to tell you about an area that almost nobody is talking about yet that could change the math on this entirely. All right, so here's something that has been coming up more and more in our conversations with buyers lately, and I think it's genuinely worth knowing about. West Jefferson, North Carolina. If you haven't heard of it, you're not alone. Most of our Florida buyers haven't, but we're seeing a real and growing number of people looking in that direction. And once I explain why, I think it's going to make sense. So West Jefferson, it's about 25 to 30 minutes from Boone. It has a downtown that is genuinely up and coming. Local restaurants, there's a bit of an art scene there. They've been quietly growing for years. It's a super walkable small town. It reminds a lot of people of what Blowing Rock felt like before prices got to where they are now. But here's the part that's most relevant to the conversation. West Jefferson consistently offers great mountain views at a lower entry point than Banner Elk and Blowing Rock markets. We're talking about properties where $1 million buys you not just into the market, but into something that actually has the view, the outdoor space, and the mountain feel that buyers are after. The trade-off is that you're a little further from the ski mountain. Beach Mountain, Sugar Mountain, they're going to be about an hour's drive rather than 15 to 20 minutes. So if skiing is a major part of why you want to be in the high country, West Jefferson may not be the right fit. But if what you're really after is the mountain lifestyle, the cool summers, the views, a beautiful home in a stunning natural setting with a charming town nearby, and you want your $1 million to work harder for you, West Jefferson deserves a serious look. We expect that area to get more attention over the next few years as more buyers discover it. The people who are looking there now are getting ahead of that curve. All right, so let me pull this all together with 3 practical things I want every buyer in this price range to know before they start seriously looking. Number 1, separate the view from the rest of your wish list and decide how important is it to you before you start shopping. If long-range mountain view is at the top of your list, tell your agent that up front. And be prepared for the budget conversation that follows. If you can genuinely live with a wooded setting and a partial view, you're going to have more options and frankly, you're going to have more negotiating room. But don't assume. Go in knowing which camp you're in because the market, it's going to ask you to answer that question very quickly once you start looking at properties. Now, number 2, don't rely on the overall market median to calibrate your budget. As I mentioned at the start of this video, the high country market has 2 very different buyer pools. The median price across the whole market does not reflect what you're actually competing for as a second home buyer in a premium area. Do your research, specifically in the communities and price ranges relevant to your search. Or better yet, have a conversation with someone who works this market every day and can give you a real picture of what your budget gets you where. Number 3. Consider West Jefferson if views are a priority and the budget is a bit of a constraint. It's a real option that more buyers are discovering, and one that we think is going to look very smart in hindsight for the people who act on it now. So that's the honest picture of what $1 million buys you right now in the high country. There's strong value in the broader Boone area. It's entry point pricing in the premium Banner Elk and Blowing Rock markets, with views as a specific premium to plan for. And it's genuinely a compelling opportunity in West Jefferson for buyers who want their budget to work harder without compromising on the mountain lifestyle they're after. If you're at the point where you want to have a real conversation about your specific budget and what your wish list will get you up here, that's exactly the kind of conversation we have every day. The link to reach us, it's in the description. We're going to give you a straight answer, not a sales pitch. And if you're not ready for that conversation yet, that's completely fine too. Start with our free High Country Buyers Wish List instead. It's in the description as well. It will walk you through exactly what to prioritize, including how much that view we talked about really matters to you, so that whenever you are ready, you already know what you're looking for. Now, please hit the like button. If this is useful for you, subscribe. We issue new content every week covering communities or market updates, everything you need to know about the high country. And do me a favor, drop a comment below. Are you surprised by what $1 million gets you up here, or does this match what you were already expecting? I read every comment, and I genuinely love to know where your head is at. I'm Jeremy with the Gillette Group. We'll see you on the next one.